Let's get it. Yep. Hey, Mr. Cross, how are you, sir?
You doing good?
Good, good.
Hi, sir.
Mr. Cross.
All right, I'd like to call to order this June meeting of the Lawrenceburg Boarding Zone of Appeals. Roll call, please. Mr. Johnson?
Chairman Rudy Ramey,
Here.
Vice Chair Bobby Mills,
Present.
Secretary Jim Crook,
Here.
Member Owen Cross,
Here.
Member Scott McLean,
Here.
Attorney Del Weldon,
Here.
and myself.
Thank you. Review of the minutes. Has everybody had an opportunity to review the minutes? And are there any additions, deletions, corrections that need to be made? Need a motion to accept the minutes from the last meeting?
I'll make the motion.
And a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Minutes accepted. Staff report.
I have nothing other than what's in your packet. The first petitioner, Stephen, is not going to be able to make it tonight.
Okay.
So this pleases the board and President Ramey. So this applicant obviously has been here before. When we took a look at the publication, out of an abundance of caution, we decided to republish this just to make sure that everything was published correctly. The applicant was informed of that, and Mr. Johnson even talked to him on the phone. He's chosen not to be here, so we'll just show this application withdrawn. If he wants to apply again in the future, he can. We'll move on to the next one.
Thank you, Dale.
Thank you, sir.
All right, the next one is Trinity Companies, and I suppose you're here for Trinity. The applicant is requesting variances to development standards and use of sections 154.23-B under use, 154.22-C, density, minimum floor area, side yard setbacks, and 154.37-C parking for the development of a new 45-unit age-restricted 55-plus multifamily community. Property in question is located at, 58 Doty Road, Lawrenceburg, Indiana. Representing Trinity, would you like to go ahead and go over your variance application, please? State your name, please.
Hi, good evening. My name is Sean McMickle, and I'm with Spire Development. We are the applicant behind this evening's discussion with Trinity. So yes, we are interested in developing a 46-unit senior age-restricted multifamily development at 58 Doughty Road. The property is currently not zoned for multifamily, so we are requesting a use variance in order to permit the intended use. And there's some pretty significant physical characteristics of the property that are behind the variance request this evening. So the site in particular has a very steep grade. It has approximately a 15% grade from north to south, yet the property is somewhat narrow in its orientation, where in the middle of the property it's only about 188 feet wide. And so that presents some very real challenges in developing the property, especially for our intended use, and that in order to comply with the zoning variances that we're requesting, we would have to go longitudinally with the property, and that would go against the grade. So working with the grade and also working with floodplain restrictions on the property is the main driver behind the requested variances this evening.
And so if it pleases the board, and what we're looking at is multiple requested variances, and one of them is a use variance and the others are variances to development standards. So I thought it might be most helpful for Mr. Johnson and then the Spire Group to kind of go through what the regulations are that the project as it stands would run afoul of, and then the variances that they're requesting. So the first one is to zone it from residential to business, and Mr. Johnson can explain to the board what level of residential zoning it is now and what level it would go to for business or commercial, and just why those are in place. And then also the neighboring property. I think that's important too, to kind of consider that.
Right.
John, what if they do get zoned out of residential into a business or commercial, what category would they go into? And can you describe kind of what that category means?
It's currently zoned business. And what they're seeking is a R1 multifamily. To your north, east, and west are already residential properties, and directly to the west is an existing multifamily. I believe it's also senior housing, isn't it?
That's right.
Inglewood, is that Inglewood?
Yeah,
Yes.
Inglewood.
And R1 is determined by, that's a residential distinction determined
Residential
by
outside
geographic
the levy
location.
is what we use.
Okay.
I might add also that the proposed use aligns with the master plan and specifically the US 58, or US 50 rather, section of the plan. It specifically states to consider multifamily housing on the north side of the highway where appropriate. And in my opinion, this is likely the most appropriate location for multifamily given the current development patterns in the corridor. It's also somewhat of a transitory location, somewhat of a missing middle type location to the neighborhoods to the north, which is also identified in the master plan as an area for future residential development. So it's a good kind of buffer from high intensity residential to lower intensity residential.
Okay. Any questions from the board on use? Do we want to do questions on each section as we go along, or do we want to wait and do it all at the end?
Mr. Amy, I think it'd be better to do each one because there are different
agree.
standards for use than
I agree.
standards.
Any questions on use on the first one?
Not me.
No?
So if it's the pleasure of the board to make a vote one way or the other, the board would need to find if the desire was to grant a use variance for this property that one of the 5 categories of approval will not be injurious to public health, safety, moral, and general welfare of the community, and the use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in substantially adverse manner, and 3, the need for the variance arises from some condition particular to the property involved, and 4, the strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will constitute an unnecessary hardship if applied to the property for which the variance is sought, and 5, the approval does not interfere substantially with the adopted comprehensive plan. And then just a little more information, and this will apply to the building standards variances that are proposed as well. But an unnecessary hardship isn't defined in the statute, but there are some other municipalities who have kind of gone on to define that. And the standard that is usually held up is from Monroe County, and Monroe County defines a significant hardship as an economic injury that arises from strict application of the ordinance to the conditions of a particular existing parcel, effectively depriving the parcel owner of the reasonable economic use of the parcel, and is clearly more significant than compliance cost or practical difficulty. So that's just a further definition of the 4th prong of the 5-part test, and you would need to find all 5 exist in the affirmative to grant the variance for just this use variance.
All right, so you want to do each use variance and grant them individually, or do we want to?
Well, this first unit, for use, it's its own variance.
Right.
The rest of them are grouped together.
Okay, oh, okay, good, all right.
And John, did the applicant provide proposed findings?
Yes.
For the use variance? Could you read those,
yes.
John?
Do what?
Could you read those? I mean, I know that they're in the record, but could you read the proposed findings, and then we could either have a vote in the affirmative proposed?
Say we normally vote to have the attorney read the finding of fact and then move on that.
Okay, I can read it then.
Well, I need if we're prepared to vote on it, I would need the board to vote to ask the attorney to read the finding of fact.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, if you would read the finding of fact on that, and then we'll take a vote on this, and then we can group the other 4 together.
Can do that.
Get a motion in a second?
Yeah, we need a motion and a second.
I'll make a motion to approve 154-23
Well,
use change.
A motion to read the finding of fact.
Okay, I motion for that.
Yeah,
I'll second
we have a first and a second to read the finding of facts, thank you.
I was confused too, Scott.
They were too.
Hey, this is an awkward process, and I appreciate you guys. I met with John before the meeting because to our applicants too, and to the board, It is confusing,
It
and I
is.
appreciate you guys being patient and working through these, because there are so many ins and outs, and that's why we're taking each variance, kind of showing, okay, well, what do they want to do? Why can't they do it on space? And then should we grant the variance? So you guys I appreciate you helping me do that, because I get lost too, so.
This is one of the largest ones that we've had.
Yeah.
Oh, is it? Good. See,
Yep.
Then I won't feel so bad. So the proposed findings of fact, and then you could vote in the affirmative, or you could disagree and deny based on these proposed findings, and it would be an adoption or rejection of all of them cumulatively. But the proposed from the applicants are: the grant will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community because there is a demonstrated need for affordable senior housing options within the community, yet very few developable parcels are available to accommodate it. The subject property is ideally situated for the proposed development due to its proximity to existing multifamily housing and amenities. The property development would be beneficial to and not injurious to community health and welfare. 2, the use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner because the proposed use will align with immediately adjacent residential uses to the northwest and east and will support commercial developments immediately adjacent to the south. Since the site is currently a vacant lot containing a dilapidated storage shed, a newly constructed elderly housing community should be accretive? Is that?
That's the word, yep.
Accretive. Yep.
Yes,
Is that a real word?
that's a word.
You swear.
I use that word every day.
Do you?
I do.
I gotta hang out at the Eagles more. The surrounding property values in the city.
In the trash world.
3, do you see? 3, the need for the variance arises from some condition particular property involved because the subject property is ideally situated for multifamily development due to existing uses in the corridor. The proposed use will directly fill a need in the community in which very few developable parcels remain to accommodate it. But the site has topographical challenges. The subject site's shape and topography severely limit its alternative uses. 4, the strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will constitute an unnecessary hardship if applied to the property for its variance sought because the subject property topography and existing adjacent uses make it unsuited for commercial development. Existing development patterns point to multifamily housing as the highest and best use of the subject property. Its current use does not add anything to the surrounding properties or city. 5, the approval of this application for variance does not substantially interfere with the city's comprehensive plan. The proposed use will align with the city's comprehensive plan. Those are the 5 categories for which we're required to have findings of fact. Those are the proposed findings of fact from the applicant. And now you guys are free to ask questions of the applicant and then have a vote.
Do we have any questions on the use?
Nope.
Can we get a motion to accept or deny?
I'll give a motion to accept.
I'll second.
We have a first and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
We're good on that one.
That was for the use. Now,
That's for the use. That's for the use.
Larger one.
Correct.
So now we have the 3 development variants. Is that correct, John?
Let's see, it's
I
1.
think there's 5.
5.
5? Okay.
Yeah, density, minimum floor area,
Right.
height, side yard setbacks, and parking.
Okay.
That's,
So we'll just start with, is density the first one?
yep, density's the first one.
So John, could you explain what that means and what our local regulations are that currently don't prohibit it or don't allow it?
With the change in use, we're going to be looking at R1 multifamily. And in our table of setbacks and areas, R1 multifamily requires 5,500 square feet of lot size per unit. With the way their development's set up, they're requesting 1,780 square feet of lot size per unit. And that covers the density portion of the request.
And that's 45 units, correct?
Yes.
46.
46 units.
On the application, it says 45, but
And John, John kind of explained to me that density is a way of saying the proportion of the green space in relation to the building space. And so what I asked him and what I guess maybe the applicant could speak a little to is how much will this reduce the green space? My understanding is there still will be green space, especially to the south. Is that?
Yeah, that's right. And I brought a site plan to show an idea of what we have in mind as far as
There you go.
the subject property, if you can still hear me. So, yes, this is our initial thoughts on where we would locate the 46-unit development. We would be accessing the property from the north side because the very south side along Dowdy Road is in the 100-year floodplain. And for multifamily, senior housing, any form of multifamily housing for that matter, we would not want our primary means of ingress and egress to be through floodplain. So that bottom portion of the property will remain, as of now, undeveloped. Perhaps we'll put some sort of amenities that could be accessed, when it's not flooding. But yes, there would still be green space on the property. To add, I guess, a little bit more color to the density request, so the current permitted 5,500 square feet per unit it equates to about 8 units an acre. What we're requesting would allow 24 units an acre, and that's immediately in line with the Englewood Place apartment development that's immediately adjacent to the west. I know that we have to go off of the current zoning, not future zoning, but in future multifamily zone designations, R5 and R6, the density proposed is 25 and 50 units an acre. So this is very much in line with, I guess, proposed development standards in the near future.
So I have a question on that picture.
Yes.
Show me where Wendy's is in relationship to that, because that looks to me.
Wendy's is right here. So
Yeah,
this
across
is
the road.
this is the access drive, this is Dowdy, this is the health center,
Right.
and Wendy's is right here.
And so the access to that comes off of the higher road then?
Comes off Bilby.
Bilby.
Bilby, yeah. Gotcha. Okay, that's what I thought, but I wasn't sure. Okay, thank you.
And, John, is there nothing gonna be between this apartments to 60 Dowdy Road apartments? Would that be green space?
Be green space, yes.
Okay, so it's basically butt up to that property then?
Whatever the
60 Dowdy Road.
the setback is, you talking the single house there?
Huh?
You talking the single house that's there?
I can't remember.
No, he's talking about Englewood.
Inglewood, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, 60, I call it 60.
I don't know what,
Yeah.
I know
We're
what
used to-
Inglewood is.
Yeah, we call
Um,
it 60 Dowdy Road.
You know what your setback is off that other housing project?
We're proposing 10 feet, the side yard setback.
And you're stepped back quite a bit farther than that housing project, I believe, aren't you?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a loose takeoff online, but it appears that Englewood is 6 to 15 feet or so side setback.
Yeah, I mean, it's right up on the road.
It's right on the property line.
Yeah.
Just a 60 Dowdy Road.
I have a question for you. Am I allowed to ask questions
What's
at
this
this
here?
moment?
Yes, absolutely.
So,
60 Dowdy Road's here.
you have 46,
is their
even though the
property,
page says 45.
This is the driveway. And that's that.
What do you need to make this work for you? Does it have to be 46, and if it's not 46, forget it? Or,
If it were 45, we would find a way to make it work. Our architect was
That's setback.
working with the topography and was able to add an additional unit in there. It made sense to add it.
so it could be less? 42? I mean, you get numbers, I mean, you figure out the,
Yeah, so it's a math problem as far as involving the land cost and the number of units that you need to support it. And 46 is about what it would take.
Any additional questions
on density?
on density? All right.
So next is a proposed variance, development standards variance for our minimum floor area. And John, if you could just kind of go through what the current regulations are and the variance that they're requesting, and
Right.
then why we have these standards in place.
So moving to the R1 multifamily, Our minimum floor area for that designation is 1,000 square feet per unit. Applicant's requesting 675 square feet for one bedroom, 875 square feet for two-bedroom units. And I'll have to let him explain his request.
Yeah, so 1,000 square feet of living space per unit is relatively prohibitive for multifamily housing. That's a very large unit size. That would be more in line with a three-bedroom unit. Being a senior housing development, it's going to be primarily one and two-bedroom units. And so we are proposing a minimum square footage of 675 and 875 for one bedroom and two bedroom respectively. That's a fairly large size, and I believe that's larger than the Englewood apartments right next door. I'll also add that, again, not to put too much weight on the proposed zoning code, but proposed zoning update minimum square footages for one and two bedrooms would be, they would be 650 and 800, so we would be larger than that. So proposed zoning 650, 800, we're proposing 675, 875, and those would be minimum square footages, so there would be units that would be larger than that as well.
John, is that correct, 650?
I'd have to check the new code out.
I didn't check it, I didn't look at the new code because we're working off old code,
Right.
so I didn't spend that time.
Those-
I only share, again, not to put too much weight on proposed zoning, it's not the current zoning.
Right.
But I only share that to, I guess, to emphasize that, current development patterns immediately adjacent and in the community are aligned with these unit sizes, and then that's expressed by the proposed zoning.
Well, one of the reasons I asked you about number of units, because when you come to a party with concept, usually you have some sort of adjustability or maybe not, but I look at that 675 as a low number. I look at the national average is 733 last year, okay? It's gone up and down. 727 was the lowest it's been in a long time, and of course it was a lot higher back 14, 15, and those areas. So I think about a family going in there or a person going in there. You add 50 feet, that's 5 by 10 area that can make a big difference inside, and I just think it's tight in my mind. Both of them are a little bit tight, not a lot, just.
So I will also stress that I'm proposing net square footage, so that's livable square feet. I don't know what statistic you're pulling from, but a lot of times those are gross square footages. And so there can be a pretty sizable difference between what gross is and the actual net when you.
Difference between including like the HVAC?
Yeah, thickness of walls, interior walls, those are all accounted for in gross square footage.
So you're saying 675 net?
675 net, that's correct, of livable, walkable floor space.
And our 1,000 is gross.
Yes.
I have a question. Would this be an open floor concept?
We tend to try to do that, yes. We have
The living room's going to be.
yeah, I can share.
The living room's going to be exposed to the
Kitchen?
kitchen and the bedroom, or the living room, the bedroom, it's all going to be exposed
Yeah, so
in one location.
these are some senior developments that we've developed and are fully operational. And I think this answers your question. These two examples here, this would be the living area, and then yes, there's an island and a kitchen. It's an open concept. We tend to have a hallway going to the one or the two bedrooms. We'll have walk-in closet. We'll have large bathrooms with accessibility features included in them for seniors.
So would the bedroom have a door?
Yes.
So it would be, and I'm trying to.
Yes. We're not proposing efficiency units.
I'm comparing this to Lutheran Manor. You ever been to Lutheran Manor?
I have not.
Lutheran Manor is, it's tight. And it's an open concept deal. You walk in the door, you're in the kitchen. You walk 2 foot, you're in the living room, and you look back a little
You're
partition, you
talking
see the bedroom.
A true efficiency.
That's it. And compared to this,
How old is that development? How old is that development?
old.
Old?
Yeah, it's been, let's see.
You're talking about the horseshoe?
No. No, I'm talking about up on the hill there off of,
Been there a long time,
Village Drive.
a long time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's Lutheran Manor. It's, I've been in there a lot. And 60 Alley Road too is another one. You know, their rooms are very, very small, you know. But if you compare this to the senior center we got over here now, that's Taj Mahal. With the city building.
Yeah.
So, anyway, that's what I want
Okay,
to see right there.
Lutheran Manor was built in 1990, and once
Lutheran
again,
Manor, built 90?
our current code went in place in 1997.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So,
I don't know if these are difficult. This is another project. This would be a representative sample of the amount of space in the living area. So this would be the kitchen area, living space. This would be a two-bedroom unit, a bedroom here, a bedroom here. The bathroom would be behind me.
So the bath is shower and tub, shower, or?
It'll be shower. We'll have some accessibility, so some of them will be roll-in showers, other will be more tub-based.
John, what, in other residential, looking at our other residential classification, what are the current code's smallest square footage for
If we
one
look
bedroom,
at,
two bedroom?
if we look at Levy Residential 2, they're only 25 feet off from those numbers. Our single bed is 700 and our two bed is 900.
So those are the current minimum
For
standards
downtown.
for a multifamily downtown, under the current code.
Right.
Yes. And those standards are the gross and not the net.
Yeah.
Any additional questions on minimum floor
could you put a
footage?
queen-size bed in that room? That bedroom?
Yeah, yes.
But not a king.
You could fit a king in there.
You think so?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I had a bedroom about 50 years ago, could put a king in. Seat stuck out the window.
Just to clarify, you're saying that's gross, so it could technically, the net could be less than what he's proposing, is that correct?
Unless I've got it backwards.
Yeah, that's.
He's
that's
talking
the correct way
livable
of-
area.
Yeah.
And I'm talking to the edge of the foundation is what our code says.
Right.
So his numbers will be higher
Yeah,
on
that's-
paper.
Yeah.
Any questions, Ms. Cross? All right. Next would go to the height.
Are we gonna approve these one at a time, or just?
These will all be grouped together as a.
These are all going to be
as
grouped
your
together,
request.
because the first was just the property use, and then this is
Okay.
all the amenities.
Our
I
two-
get it.
Our two types of variances we're going to look at are use and development standards.
Right.
I'd like to group development standards as one.
Yep.
Okay.
So our code, once again, looking at that R1 multifamily, our max height's 3 stories or 40 feet. They're requesting 4 stories and 48 feet.
John, do we have any four-story buildings in Lawrenceburg?
We do, yes. They're all based on variances.
Yeah, what are some examples?
Of course, the Ivy Tech. Then we'll have the Event Center, Whiskey River. That's about it off the top of my head.
Casino?
Definitely casino parking garage.
How about the fire department? What does it say about it?
Fire department was exempt because that's city project. Not sure what the height of it is.
No, I'm talking about the fire department. They'd have to approve this anyway, wouldn't
They don't have to approve the
they?
variance.
No, right,
They have to approve the site plan.
right, yeah.
Yes.
Right, yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, and that's important to remember, even if all these variances are approved, they still have to get through the site plan
Right.
process. So,
Yep, just the first step.
Yes.
the road coming off of BLB, all the safety concerns, all those things will be
This building
vetted.
gonna have room for
early.
an elevator?
It will have an elevator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good question. And then, John, so it's either 4 stories, right now it's 3 stories and 40 feet is our max. Do we have any buildings that are taller that are maybe 2 or 3 stories but taller than 40 feet that you could think of?
I do not know off the top of my head.
Okay. So it's kind of both things. They're asking to build a 4-story, which just.
Well, you know what? I would probably say St. Lawrence Church
Okay,
as an example.
so we prohibit 4 stories, no matter how tall they are, and then we prohibit any building that's over 40. So they want, there's kind of 2 parts to this.
I look at that property and I think when I was sitting there in my car looking at it, it's such a tall, visually, it's a tall hill coming up, that the height aesthetically certainly is not going to make a difference. But then I understood based on the typography of that, how you need to go up.
Yeah,
You can't go out or down.
Have you had geotechs down on that site?
we have not yet.
Okay.
Yeah, we of course will, and.
Well,
yeah.
once they get to that point, the geotechnical report will tell them what kind of footer they need for a 4-story building.
And that'll be part of the site plan process, John?
That will be a required part of the site plan review, yes.
Yep. John, if you know, I mean, what are some of the reasons in your experience that we do prohibit 4-story buildings and we do prohibit buildings over 40 feet, just historically?
Historically, that's what a consultant told us back in '97.
Okay. Have you run into any, like, actual practical examples of where a building shouldn't be that tall, or is it case by case?
We rely on a geotechnical report to tell us, because they'll have the building loads, they'll prescribe the footers, and I'm sure it was done downtown because the whole town's built on fill. That US 50 corridor is a little bit different.
We will be very sensitive to geotechnical results that, we would never build a project. I'll also point out that, again, the proposed zoning that is set to take place soon, this property is designated highway business in the proposed zoning, which allows 60 feet in height. The proposed multifamily designations, R5 and R6, allow 55 and 70-foot heights. So this is in line with, I guess, the proposed zoning for development patterns in the future.
This rendering shows 3 stories, correct?
So, yeah,
It's 3 in the front and 4 in the rear when it goes downhill.
that's right. One of the renderings are to provide a character of
Sure.
the type of developments we've done. This is a 3-story. This is a 4-story.
They look very, very good. They'll be a real positive for the area, very positive for the area.
Yeah.
And in our opinion, we think that with the topography on site, with the height of the hill, that the 4-story, the architect will work with the topography and it'll blend in nicely. It won't be a sore thumb sticking out.
And it won't obstruct the view from anybody,
No.
across the street anyway.
I might have to move him one of them. I turned 55.
Long time.
You got to hold on one of those, you say, for how long?
5 more years?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any additional feedback or questions from the board? Dell, anything from you?
No, sir.
All right, let's go to the next one, 15422-C, side yard setbacks.
Okay, as far as side yard setbacks, once again, initially we looked at R1 multi, and in the table, the setbacks for R1 multi are 50 feet side, 40-foot rear. If we look at LR2, levy residential multi, those go down to 10 feet and 15 feet. I recommended he put this in here just to cover all of his bases.
You want to go ahead and go through the request?
Yeah, certainly. So a big part of this request is that the site is very narrow.
Right.
At 188 feet. So if we were to abide by the 50-foot side yard setbacks, we would only have 80 feet to work with. And then, of course, with the topography, the incline, we wouldn't be able to situate a building effectively with those setbacks. So that's why we requested the 10-foot.
John, in your experience, what's the reasoning behind how we determine what setback should be? And then, I guess, just looking at the properties to the east and west, what are the concerns, if any, that you would have?
I would have to get, once again, fire department review, because I don't know what building separation needs to be for a project like this. But I don't know why that 50 feet was in there to start with. This was intended for properties on Ludlow Hill, where they're generally larger tracts,
Larger lots.
that would have been then surrounded by parking in that 50 feet.
How close is the adjacent Englewood building? what's the setback, what's the side yard setback to the east of the Englewood, that the Englewood
Let's
has?
see here. After first,
I did a takeoff, and I was measuring roughly 6 feet on the east
the property line.
from the property line, 15 feet on the west, but that's a rough takeoff online. It's not a survey, but it gives an idea of
How
the
far
current
Englewood
development.
is off their property line.
That's right, correct.
So the building to building will be 16 feet? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, no, Sean, your proposed setbacks are what?
My proposed setbacks are 10 foot, so if we were immediately adjacent, yes. If they're 6 feet, then we would be 16 feet. But the way our building is situated, we'll be much higher on the hill compared to the Englewood, which is on the
line of sight,
frontage.
You'll be 50-plus feet away.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So the buildings would not be 16 feet from each other,
Correct.
which would create a fire concern. That's not present. Okay.
Nope.
I think that's important to note,
No.
because they're offset, so they're not side by side.
Well, just because of the way the building's configured and where Englewood is, it's going to be a lot more than
Opposite
16
ends of the
feet.
lot, yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be at the upper end of the lot, so I think there'll be plenty of room up there.
And then what about the residential house to the east? How far away? And just for everyone's,
That's way.
obviously you know this, but we notified all the residential property owners and sent them formal notice, and they have an opportunity to be here tonight if they had an issue with this. But
Right.
we're kind of also their advocates too.
I don't have a takeoff with me on the residential house. Just from eyeballing the GIS map, it looks very similar to Englewood. Where that house is situated, we would be closer to that house than we would from Englewood, but their driveway would be in between us, so that would give some additional space. So I believe the way, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the way setbacks are defined is the building and structures, not necessarily improvements. So you could have a driveway.
You can, yeah, it's to the furthest point on the building, the gutter, eave.
So driveways are typically anywhere from 18 to 24 feet would be a very wide driveway, but that gives some perspective of roughly how far the house is. I would have to do a GIS takeoff, but
All right.
John, you've looked at, I think probably these last two are the most important ones, maybe, setbacks and then parking. But John, you took a look at this, and if these proposed side yard setbacks are approved through a variance, based on where the Englewood building will be, and then based on where the residential home to the east will be, do you have any concerns as the administrative person for planning and zoning when you're looking at it?
On the
generally?
initial site plan, I have no real concerns with it because it appears the house will be basically in line with the parking lot, and Englewood will be far enough away from the back that they'll never hear each other.
Okay. Thank you.
Does anybody else on the board have any questions?
On parking?
That's where we're off to. We're off to
Parking's the
parking.
next one. Our code requires 2 unenclosed parking spaces per multifamily unit. Our applicant's requesting 1 unenclosed space per unit.
reason behind this request is we find that 2-0 parking ratio is largely unnecessary. Most of it goes unused. We prefer to incorporate as much green space as we can in our properties. We, specifically for our senior properties, we have done 1-0 ratios, and we find that that is sufficient parking. Englewood, immediately next door, has a 1-0 parking ratio. This is highly subjective. I drove by the development earlier this evening, and there were at least 10 to 15 spaces open. It didn't appear to be an issue. The way this site plan is laid out too, ultimately at the end of the day, we as owners bear the risk for the property. If we don't have sufficient parking, it's not going to lease up. If there isn't enough parking for family members to visit, then people aren't going to want to live there. And so the way we have it laid out, there is room that we could add additional parking spaces if needed. But we feel strongly that the 1-0 ratio is appropriate for the population and the product type that we're proposing. based off of our comparable properties across the Midwest.
Based on the site plan, all the parking is going to be just off the Bilby Road exit. There won't be any parking in front. So front facing toward 50 is just going to be the building itself.
That's right. Mostly green space and then the building, then parking behind it, yeah.
Gotcha.
Now, you mentioned Inglewood, 60 Gowdy Road, parking compared to this. I don't think you can compare the two, because Inglewood is not, it ain't 55 and older.
I do not
It's
know.
not a senior building.
No.
It's a low-income subsidized building.
I thought it was senior. I looked up a brochure online and,
Trust me,
okay.
I've been there many times
okay.
on the ambulance there. And there's younger people live there.
It might be
But
20.
majority of them, are low income. They don't have cars. But your senior building you're gonna build here at 55 and older, I'd say about everyone that moves in there is probably gonna have a car. And if you got a husband and wife or a significant other, you're gonna have 2 cars. Where are they gonna park? Where's that second car gonna be parked at? Across the street? In the bank lot or the CMHC lot? I mean, it'd be overcrowded, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that theoretically, if we were short on parking, then yes, that would be the logical place, yeah.
See that?
Yeah, yeah.
It'd be tight.
I'm concerned about that lack of parking too. I think that you got gas, which I don't know what you allocate for a gas. So you got 46 spots, because you're saying 1 per unit. And then how many more is there? I didn't count them, so I can't. How many more spots are there?
There's just 46 on the plan, yeah.
Now, your other properties, is this a concern on parking? Is it 1 per unit?
Yeah, on our senior properties, we've done one,
No problems?
and we haven't had any issues, no. I would like to point out that the proposed zoning that is upcoming will allow 1.25 per unit. And so potentially we could take a look at that. We really do feel that 1 per unit is appropriate. But I share the 1.25 in the proposed zoning because I think a lot of communities across the country are realizing that, excess parking is just dead, wasted space. That could be used as green space. It's expensive to maintain. It can, it creates issues for stormwater management. You have to oversize stormwater detention. So those are, some of the reasons that we prefer to have the 1.0, and then the reality of it is that we haven't had issues with it. And again, if we have a shortage of parking, then it would be in our best interest to build more, because if the people don't want to live there, then the property would not run well.
When you speak about other properties elsewhere, I think about where you come from, Columbus, Ohio. I lived there for, 50 years. So I know that there's developments and you can walk to the corner and get on the bus. We don't have a bus system. Matter of fact, we have night out, right? And then we have
Catch a ride.
catch a
Catch a
ride.
ride. Yep.
But that's another one you wait for. It's not like we have public. So what you're used to maybe in other cities is totally different from what we have here, that's for sure.
But there is some seniors 55 and older that don't have cars. They rely on catch a ride.
A lot of them,
I mean, if you look at both sides of the fence,
a lot of them.
Yeah.
yeah, so
I see catch a ride all over town.
that's a tough call. What do you think, John? What's your opinion?
That's a hard one. That's a hard one.
It's hard,
about that
yeah, it
separately,
is.
yes.
I mean, what do you do? You're gonna, let's say me and my wife wants to move in your senior building. She got a car and I got a car. I want to say, well, honey, we're gonna sell yours. We ain't allowed to park there. So you're gonna assign 1 parking spot per unit? They're gonna have their own private spot?
I think,
See senior citizens over having to knock down drag out over a parking spot.
I think we treat it on a case-by-case basis for the properties. So potentially, if it were necessary, we would do assigned spaces. We haven't had to do that yet. We find that it averages out appropriately. Yeah, it would be on a case-by-case basis on what we're observing when we start leasing.
Because there's no off-street parking over there. Yeah, I mean, we have that in town now, where we have an event here, people's dragging out their garbage cans in their parking spots when they get home from work so they can park. You know, I can see that happening over there, trying to fight over a parking spot if everybody's got cars. I'm sure a lot of them won't, but you don't know that, you know.
So I have a question about, can you redesign that to make it 1.25? So add a few spots to that layout to satisfy maybe some of our concerns? And can we?
Yeah, I think we could
do that? Can we
easily,
add that to the variant?
Conditional variance?
You
Conditional?
sure can?
Yep, we can do a conditional variance to it.
That's a good idea, yeah.
yeah, I think we could easily add, so 1.25 would be an additional 12 spaces. That would be 56 spaces.
58.
58, yeah, sorry, 58 total spaces, excuse me.
Just say, I hope my math was off.
I'm sorry. 58, yeah, additional 12 spaces. And for context, you know, this is 4, so we could easily fit 3. Yeah, I mean, we could find it, we could squeeze in 12 more spaces easily.
Good point, guys.
Yeah, good, good.
Yep. All right, do we have anything else on the, we do not. That was it. Do we have any additional questions then? And if not, I will ask Mr. Weldon to read the,
Let's do a motion second for that.
oh, I'm sorry?
Let's do a motion in a second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
On
Yeah.
fact.
Need a motion to read the findings of fact.
I make that motion.
All right, need a second.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Your Honor, and say a couple things. Remember that this is, these are just proposed findings of fact. You're free to accept these or reject these or modify these. And even though we've grouped all 5 proposed development standards variances together, you're free to reject this based on even just one of them. So a vote to approve this would be a vote to approve all 5 proposed development standards variances and to approve all 3 of these findings of fact for all 5. So if you think 4 out of 5 are good, but the 5th one isn't, then you would vote against it. And if you think all 5 are good, then you'd vote for it.
So if we want to place like the parking one, if we want to put that under a conditional variance, do we need to add that now or is that after the fact?
I would add that, I mean, I would say whoever makes a vote, if they could say, I vote to approve it, conditioned on the 1.25 spaces.
Fair enough.
And then either way that it's approved, whether it's 1 space or 1.25 spaces, if it is approved, I would say that it will be conditioned on the actual sale and construction through Spire. So we wouldn't grant these variances just generically to the property. It's conditioned on
Right.
this proposed
Right.
transaction and Spire as a group, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does.
So it
Thank
only
you.
applies. Okay, thank you. So the proposed findings of facts are, 1, the grant not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community because granting of the proposed development standard variances will allow the development of a project that fulfills a community need and aligns with existing development in the immediate vicinity. The proposed development would be beneficial to and not injurious to community health and welfare. The setbacks, parking, floor area, and density are appropriate in the subject area and consistent with surrounding developments. 2, the use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner because the property is bounded by existing multifamily residential to the north, west, residential to the east, and existing commercial development to the south. Granting of the requested variances will permit development of the subject property in line with existing adjacent uses. And 3, the strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will result in practical difficulties in the use of the property because topographical restrictions and existing floodplain along Dowdy Road frontage prohibit efficient development of the subject parcel.
Those are the findings of fact. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Would anybody like to make a motion to accept or deny
I'll make a
variance?
motion to accept it on the conditions that Della mentioned.
Is that, Mr. Crook, with the condition of the 1 space or 1.25 spaces?
1.25.
Yes, sir.
1.25, and it just stays with Spire. It doesn't go with the,
Right.
it doesn't go with the land.
Yes, sir.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Variance has been accepted. Mr. Randy, can I get the signatures on your copy there?
I will do so. Thank you. Yes.
And then, along with this approval, these minutes will become a part of the variance.
Okay, thank you.
All right, while we're signing this up, do we have any old business that we need to go over?
I have none.
Motion to adjourn.
Make a motion.
I'll second it.
We are adjourned. Mr. Frost?
Very well prepared.
Want my knee?
So, that's good.
Basketball.
I'm glad you brought up.
Now it's finally.